baby bottles in the back. If you fill those up, bring them back, that'll be helpful to that ministry because they had to cancel several of their fundraisers this year. So if we can help them out, that would be fabulous. The nursery here at Calvary will be opened up next Sunday morning. This coming Friday night will be volleyball in the gymnasium with Pastor Campbell. Starting next Sunday night will be life group with Pastor Campbell. And just as a reminder, because of Father's Day, we will not be having an evening service this week. God bless you.
2 Samuel chapter 22, David says, "The Lord is my rock and my fortress and my deliverer, the God of my strength, in whom I trust, my shield and the horn of my salvation, my stronghold and my refuge." Amen. 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 Let's stand and let's sing, "A Mighty Fortress is Our God."
to see everybody this morning. So glad we are able to gather together here at Calvary and to worship, and those joining us on the live stream, glad that they are with us as well. That has opened up a wonderful opportunity of extending ministry beyond these walls that is beyond our imagination. Last week's live stream was, of course, posted live and then on YouTube. By Monday, there had already been 200 views on Facebook. The word is not limited to just staying within these four walls, and that is a wonderful thing. Keep praying about that, because who knows what God is going to do with that. I know this morning, today is Sunday is Father's Day, and I do not have a Father's Day message per se, and I'll explain that in a moment. But I do want to say this, as I do every year at Father's Day and Mother's Day, because I think it is extremely important that we understand this. Father's Day, for some, is a very difficult day, as is Mother's Day. I was reminded of that again. A friend of mine whose father passed away a number of years ago sent me a text yesterday. Don't forget us, those who are hurting. You know, most of the time we see a holiday like this come along, and, the excitement and just, the thankfulness, the gratefulness, and all of that has its rightful place and should be. But let's be mindful of those who are hurting. Because there are those, even in our church family, who have lost their father not too awful long ago. That is still a very difficult thing to deal with. There are those who wanted to be a father and never were. And every Father's Day is a reminder of that, as a friend of mine is. And he really struggles with that deeply. And so it is not always a joyous day for everyone. I get that. I understand that, and I think we need to show love and respect to those who may not come to a holiday like this with perhaps the joy and excitement and anticipation. I know I lost my dad in 1983. There is hardly a day goes by that I won't have some thought about him or some memory at some point. So in all those years, that reality is still there. So we need to understand that, which then should also bring us to the place where if your father is still here, then you need to be thankful and grateful for that. And so I just wanted to share that with you. And there are always godly principles and characteristics for Mother's Day and Father's Day that we can take and apply to all of us as followers of Christ to follow, and I would encourage you to do that. However, my message this morning is not going to be directed at Father's Day. Where we are in our nation, in our country, I think would be a huge mistake, at least on my part as the senior pastor, just to open the book and just to go into some passage somewhere without addressing or attempting to bring the scripture to bear on the world in which we live and what we are looking at. And this may be for a couple of weeks, because the way our world is going, this isn't going to be over soon. And I'm talking about all the variables that seem to be just out of our control. And so I was thinking for several days this week what to title this message. I tend to leave that till the end, that I'm not framing a message around the title, but I'm deriving a title out of the message. There's a big difference, okay? And so I was thinking the last couple of days, and just really all over the place with what to title this message. When bad days come, difficult times, all those kinds of things, because that's what we're going to be looking at. But we're going to come at it from a biblical perspective, which is what we should always do. And so this morning, I finally came to the answer, and it was like, yeah, that's simple. These bright ideas that just strike you at the most random times. I'm getting my shower, and I've learned to keep a notepad right around so I can reach around and grab it, because I've learned, being at the age that I am, that if I don't write that down right away, I'll get it when I get out, get dressed, I go to my desk, forget it. It left the planet. So I'm jotting things down. So this one was not hard to remember. So if you're taking notes, I'm going to give you the title right up front. Here's the title. When, and then draw a blank line. And then you fill in whatever happens when. You come back to these three main points that I'm going to give to you this morning. When, fill in the blank. When the world turns upside down. When politics well, I was going to say fall apart, but I don't know that they've ever been all that put together. When the political scene just goes haywire, when the stock market goes down, when finances crash, when a virus, a pandemic sweeps across, when illness comes in, when tragedy strikes, when there's a storm that blows up that's totally unexpected. You fill in the blank. So you just have when and then a blank line, because then you can erase that for when the next thing comes along. And always come back to this. There are 3 points that we're going to come to this morning that will always apply to these upsets in life. Who could have imagined, who could have written a script for what we've experienced in the last 6 months? Who would have thought Christmas or New Year's that we would be living in the world in the shape, in the moral, ethical, political, financial, health situation? You realize that all of those went south at the same time. And so who could have imagined all of this? Well, I want to bring you just some lyrics to some songs from people who experienced difficult times in the past. Why should I feel discouraged? Why should the shadows come? Why should my heart feel lonely and long for heaven and home when Jesus is my portion? A constant friend is he. His eye is on the sparrow, and I know he watches over me. Or how about this? Troublesome times are here, filling men's hearts with fear. By the way, I think this was written about 1972. Freedom we all hold dear now is at stake. This is almost prophetic. Humbling your hearts to God saves from the chastening rod. Seek the pilgrims trod. Christians, awake. Jesus is coming soon. Morning or night or noon. You know what? When all these things go sideways in life, we tend to forget that. It's almost as if that thought is the bailout. How sad we approach it that way. Many will meet their doom, trumpets will sound, and all of the dead shall rise, righteous shall meet in the skies, going where no one dies, heavenward bound. Troubles will soon be o'er, happy forevermore, when we meet on that shore, free from all care. Rising up in the sky, telling this world goodbye, homeward we then shall fly, glory to share. Now, part of that song talks about rising up in the air and the rapture and everything. Sometimes, and I'm guilty of this myself, man, I'm ready for the rapture just to get out of here. That is the wrong motive. You know what that motive is? That motive is man-centered and selfish. Really? Ooh, ouch, we've already started that. You know what the reason should be? I'm ready for the rapture because I want to be with Jesus. It's the motivation to be somewhere more so than to get away from something. We sang this hymn. A mighty fortress is our God. A bulwark never failing. Our helper, he amid the flood of mortal ills prevailing. Now, the English is Old English structure. I get that and I understand it, but I still think it is very beautiful. I saw an article not too long ago where somebody posted 15 hymns we need to do away with because they're archaic. I've not responded yet to it because I can't tame down the fire enough yet. And I read this article, and I'll be honest with you, it was by a younger person, which the older I get, there tend to be more of them. And I read this, and it was, we don't understand these words, and we don't understand this terminology, and we don't talk this way. And I'm thinking, instead of educate yourself as to why people wrote that way, you would rather remain ignorant and just wash them away and miss the experience, the truth, the doctrine, the teaching. There's a lot of that today. A lot of that. Let's just do away with these old, archaic sounding tunes, hymns, songs, whatever. For still our ancient foe does seek to work us woe, his craft and power are great, and armed with cruel hate. On earth is not his equal. Did we in our own strength confide, our striving would be losing. We're not the right man on our side, the man of God's own choosing. Can I tell you something? This does not need rewritten. So I'll not read the rest of it. We sung through the verses. You know that as A Mighty Fortress is Our God. It's a great devotional hymn, by the way, just to read through those in your prayer time or even pray through those lyrics. Great guide in leading you to prayer. So I'm going to ask you to turn to the psalm that this was written from, and that is Psalm 46. Psalm 46. Now, portions of this psalm we know very well. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Oh, what a beautiful, familiar phrase. We also know verse 10 very well. We quote it quite often. Be still and know that I am God. Okay? Actually, that's the part we quote, and it's just one fragment of a statement again. Unfortunately, we know very little of what is in between verse 1 and verse 10 as to why this would be said. And we're going to discover that this morning. So I want to read through these 11 verses with you following along, and then we're going to go and we're going to walk through them, and then our three main points are actually coming out of verse 10. So, it begins, God. What a great place to start. Every day, every minute, every hour, every year of your life, start with God. You know, part of the problem is with the things that we see in the world and how upset we get and fearful and everything else, and what do we do, is we start with our problems, and that leads us to panic instead of starting with God, and that leads us to praise. Which would you rather do? God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore, we will not fear, even though the earth be removed, and though the mountains be carried into the midst of the sea, though its waters roar and be troubled, though the mountains shake with its swelling. There is a river whose streams shall make glad the city of God, the holy place of the tabernacle of the Most High. God is in the midst of her, she shall not be moved. God shall help her just at the break of dawn. The nations raged, the kingdoms were moved. He uttered his voice, and the earth melted. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our refuge. Selah. Come, behold the works of the Lord, who has made desolations in the earth. He makes wars to cease, to end the earth. He breaks the bow and cuts the spear in two, and he burns the chariot with fire. Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our refuge. Selah. Now, let me make some comments about this psalm as a whole. This is one of a triad. 46, 47, and 48 are all triumphant psalms. At the heading of your of this particular psalm, Psalm 46, you probably have some commentary there telling you to the chief musician. If you do not realize, the book of Psalms are hymns. They were meant to be sung. It's amazing how hymns or songs and music sticks with us. How we seem to be able to remember songs for decades. How the lyrics go and the tune goes, and it's a great, great way to remember Scripture. So it's a song that was to be sung. It says a psalm of the sons of Korah, and then a song of Alamoth. And oftentimes, through the book of Psalms, we have these little commentary notes and directions in there that we're not really sure exactly what they mean. Now, this thing of a song for Alamoth is believed to be a song put together to be sung by higher voices or higher instruments with higher voices. It's used somewhere else in Scripture, and it kind of leans that direction, though it doesn't state it specifically. So why is that important? Well, it's to understand that it's kind of an anthem sung of encouragement and uplifting. It's to give focus and direction. Notice that this psalm begins with God in verse 1, and it ends with God. God is the bookends. He's the beginning, He's the end. He's the Alpha, He's the Omega, even in this psalm. I want you to know that God is referred to 18 different times in 11 verses. Oh, how the perspective of life changes when we keep God the main thing, or the main one, instead of our problems. You know, sometimes I hear Christians talking, and man, they're just wrapped around the axle. Now listen, you know I've said before, it is right to be concerned, it is wrong to be consumed. And unfortunately, I hear so many who sound like they are absolutely consumed by what's going on in the world. Concerned, yes. Consumed, no. There's no need for us to be consumed. So we notice that God is referred to 18 times. Who do you think the main character in this psalm is? God. Who should be the main character in your life? God. Not me and my problems, but God in His glory. Now, also, let's take note of a couple of phrases in here. And I won't be able, because I want to focus on verse 10 primarily, put things in perspective, but we won't be able to break the entire chapter down detail for detail this morning. Notice it says, God is our refuge. Now here is that corporate focus. It's meant for a group. You know, David writes in Psalm 23, the Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pasture. Okay, He leadeth me beside. So it's all that individual, that personal pronoun. Here it is a plural. Our. He is our refuge. So this is a group. This is the followers of God together. And we're saying God is our refuge. Not just my refuge, although that is true within the plural, it's looking at the group. So it's meant to be an encouragement to those who are followers. God is our refuge. The word refuge here means, as we commonly understand it, a place that we get into where there is rest and protection. It's a place to get out of the storm. Now, the other day, Friday, my wife had her chemo, and so we stopped at Sheetz on the way home for her frozen latte, and when I went in, I could hear the thunder rumbling. And so I thought I parked enough under the big overhang. There was one spot there, you know, thank you, Lord, just for me. Parked the car there, go in and get the latte, and I'm standing there paying, and the rain is just like, it just blew in. Now, I'm in a place of refuge, right? I'm out of that, but I got to get to the car, and I'm thinking, I parked under the overhang. You know, well, that only happens when the rain's coming straight down. The rain was coming kind of left to right. And I got soaked. You know, God is a refuge that doesn't leave us out to get drenched. He doesn't fail us. This refuge is the place, the one that we go into. He refers to Himself as the refuge, not a place, not a building, but Himself. He is the refuge. In the New Testament, it's put this way: I'm in Christ. I am in Him. I love that little word in the Greek, in. Now, there are different ways to translate it, but when it's related to that particular phrase, it literally means to be placed within, inside of. So we see this idea that God paints Himself as our refuge. He is the one that we run into. There are other places in the Psalms where He says that He is a high tower that we run into. What a beautiful picture. And so He is our refuge. The next word there is and strength. Strength. Oh, how often are we weak and frail? Pretty much every day. If it's not physically, it's emotionally. If it's not physically and emotionally, it's spiritually. And sometimes it's all three together at the same time. And we are weak, but he is our strength. I don't have to weather the storm and stand against the waves and the winds blowing when I'm in him. I want you to see the contrast between refuge, which is a reflection or insinuation of my weakness, and his strength. You know, those who need to run into a refuge, first of all, need to recognize in our own strength, if we confide, our striving would be losing. That's where this comes from. The person who seeks refuge recognizes our weakness. Lord, I can't deal with this. I need you. And God says, that's the very reason, one of the very reasons for the storms in life. So that you remember, you need me. Notice next, a very present help in trouble. I read this in a commentary and I underlined it and I kept going over it. Listen to this. This very present, he is more present than the trouble itself. I thought, wow, that nails it. He's more present than the trouble itself. He stays, he abides. The troubles come and go. He's strong and mighty. He endures. No matter what the circumstance or situation. Listen, we are looking at a world that is turned upside down, inside out, sideways. And we'll all, to be honest, everyone here, we're not exactly sure what world's, speaking world-wise, now I know prophetically, I'm going that direction. We're not exactly sure what is the outcome of all of this, day-to-day wise. Now I know God has a plan, God's plans can't be thwarted, and he has a purpose and all of that. I understand all of that. But you know, this God, this one who is the refuge and the strength, is a very present, not just present, he's very present. What a beautiful picture. The idea is that it's written in a tense, he's always there. You never have to go looking for him, although he sometimes has to go looking for us. Isn't that true? He's always very present in trouble. So then the result of that is, therefore we will not fear. Not because we've figured it out, but because we are in the refuge. It is his strength. He's always very present. Therefore we shall not fear. Even though the earth be removed and the mountains be carried into the midst of the sea. Now, this was written thousands of years ago in a different language. But does that sound like the world we're looking at? I'm telling you what, the world's shaken apart, right? Though its waters roar and be troubled, though the mountains shake with its swelling. Now, he paints that picture and then moves to the next focus. There is a river whose streams shall make glad the city of God, the holy place of the tabernacle of the Most High. Now that only makes sense if we have it in contrast to the verses that were just before. Okay, the earth being removed, the mountains carried to the sea, the waters troubled, the mountains shaken. However, here's the other part of it. There is a city. Oh, there is. Now listen how he describes this place. There is a river whose streams shall make glad the city of God. Now the city of God is one of the ways of referring to Jerusalem. Jerusalem stands as a symbol on the earth of God's holy city, the heavenly city. There will be a new heaven, a new earth, and a new Jerusalem one day. But until that day, Jerusalem is to stand as the city of God, that earthly symbolic representation and reminder of Jehovah God. Now, what we need to understand is this psalm is believed to have been written when there was an enemy attack that was coming against the city of a great, mighty enemy that they could never defeat. But they lived in the refuge of a holy city of God. And through that city, or in that city, were springs of water. Now back in that day, one of the ways that an enemy was defeated was you laid siege to their city. You encamped all around them, and you didn't allow any supplies in or any people out, and eventually they ran out of everything, and they got thirsty and hungry. And guess what? You win then. You overthrow them. But if they had this great walled city and they had a water supply inside, that they could continue to have water and to grow things, not likely you're going to overthrow them. And this is the picture that God is painting. He's saying the world all around is falling apart to the point that the waves and the mountains and the seas and all of that is just in tumult. But there is a river whose streams shall make glad. Now, listen, those couple verses don't sound like glad things, right? Roaring waters, mountains shaking, that's not glad things. So he's painting this picture when you are in the refuge and leaning on his strength. The holy place of the tabernacle of the Most High. God is in the midst of her. She shall not be moved. God's plans, listen, are eternal because he made them. God shall help her just at the break of dawn. The nations raged. That sounds like a headline. The kingdoms were moved. He uttered his voice and the earth melted. Verse 7. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is a refuge. Now that's twice mentioned in this psalm. Verse 7 and verse 11. It's at the end of sections. It's believed that the chorus of voices and instruments sang all the preceding verses, sang them out, and then the congregation or the listeners would respond with this great anthem, the Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our refuge. And then this closing word, Selah, which has caused all kinds of confusion because we really don't know what it exactly means. It is defined as meaning things like stop, hear, and think about it, pause and meditate, contemplate what was just said, praise, a response of praise. Some people believe it's just simply an Old Testament amen and hallelujah. I'd like to say they're all right. Just so you know, there's actually debates on things like that. I don't have time for that. Okay, so we see here this conclusion of this contrast. It starts with God is our refuge and strength. The world is in chaos. Look at the news headlines as if we can avoid them. Hear the news reports, read the newspapers. The world is in chaos. Economic, health, morals, ethics, all of these things are just, they're in chaos. They've gone completely sideways. And as I mentioned earlier, all at the same time. Now listen, we've gone through times in history past where some of these things have happened at different times. But everything seems to have happened in the last 3 to 4 months. But I want you to know something. God is our refuge and strength. A very present help in trouble. Therefore, we will not fear, though the mountains and on down through those verses. So, I want you to notice there are basically 3 sections to this psalm. The first is where the Selah is at the end of verse 3, then Selah at the end of verse 7, and then Selah at the end of verse 11. There's 3 sections to this. So now let's look at verse 8, verses 8 and 9. Notice, come behold the works of the Lord, who has made desolations in the earth. He makes wars cease to the end of the earth. He breaks the bow and cuts the spear in two. He burns the chariot with fire. These are things that he has done, things that he can do, and things that he will do. Because God is always at work. In times like these, we sometimes, and a lot of unbelievers, or those who are skeptical of God, where is God in all of this? He's at work. We don't see or understand all the time what he's doing, but God doesn't stop working. And he, in this part of this song that is being sung, wants people to remember, listen, I'm at work. I'm involved in what's going on. I know what's going on. Trust me. Stay in the refuge. Lean on my strength. So he is active. Now through some of these we can see the power of God, the plan of God. We see the prophecy of God here. We see the promises of God. All of these different things are in there. But I want us to look this morning now at primarily verse 10. Be still and know that I am God. We know that part. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. And now let me just say before we jump into this verse that those last two statements there, I will be exalted, I will be exalted, those are prophetic because they haven't happened yet. That's yet to come. So that's a promise. That's what we ought to be looking forward to. I don't know how all of this mess is going to work out here, but I know this. God is going to be exalted. There are a couple of words here I want to touch on before we jump into that. Be still and know. That word know in verse 10, that's a very important word. There are different ways in Hebrew and in Greek of saying the word know and how it applies to our lives. Also the word be still. What is that referring to exactly? And then we're going to look at that I am God. That is the anchor and the foundation of everything that's in this song. I am God. So let's start with be still. You and I think of be still, and when I was going through this again, and I've read through this psalm so many times, in my mind I remember as a young boy going to church with my family and going in and finding our pew. Yeah, we had one of those. Okay, it was our pew. So we went in, sat in our pew, and I'd sit there next to my dad, and you'd play with the bulletin, and you'd draw a little bit, and and he'd give you his watch, which I was fascinated because it was one of those, I don't know what they used to call them. It was one of those wristbands that you could just twist it all around and, almost tie a knot and go right back and everything else. And, I'd play with that and make tank treads out of it, good stuff you do in church. Okay, now I'm not making suggestions. Okay, so, well, if everybody check your watches at the door. So I remember all of this, but because of this, every once in a while, my dad would lean down, be still. And the idea was, don't move, okay? You're being forced not to move because of external expectations. Be still. And maybe you've used that with children in some setting. Be still. Okay? That's not exactly what this means here. It means more of be at rest in me. A little bit different than just saying be still. Okay, because being at rest means to lay down your burden. Stop fretting about and trying to do everything in your own strength and solve every mystery and being so consumed with everything. Be still. Rest in me. Back to refuge. Repeated 3 times. Rest in the refuge. This time that we are living in should be for us, for believers, for the Church of Jesus Christ, the greatest time to shine the light. Because it's really dark. We are living in moral, ethical, political, financial, health darkness. We should be the brightest light out there. Not politicians, not the medical world, as needed as they are, if you understand what I mean. We run to them for all of the answers. Not the stock market and the Dow and the NASDAQ and all those other whatevers. Not those things. This world, the unsaved, the lost, who are just enveloped with the darkness that is over our world right now, should be seeing the bright light of Jesus Christ in us and running to us and asking a reason of the hope that is in us. because my God is a very present help in trouble. You need to know him. So, this idea of be still is not the idea of just stop moving. It's the idea of rest in me. Put down your fretting. Put down your fear. Put down your worry. Put down all the problems and the difficulties. Quit carrying them all around. Put them down and rest. Jesus put it this way. Set your burden down. Set your yoke aside. Take my yoke on you. Now you realize that when Jesus says that, he's telling us, don't do it your way, do it my way, but you still have some responsibility. He didn't say to go with no yoke at all. Put yours down. Put that weight down, that burden, put it off your shoulders. That's the idea of be still. Now, that's a whole lot more than just be still. You see, and if we have just be still without something for it to stand on, well, it's not going to last too long. Be still. I need a reason to know why I need to be still. Now, I want to go to a couple of references, and I have them marked here. You can jot down a reference. I'll probably be through it before you can get there very quickly. And I'm reading from Exodus chapter 14. This is the Red Sea crossing. This is where the nation of Israel comes up to the Red Sea, and now Pharaoh's army is coming in. Now you have a bunch of slaves who have just escaped everything, and they've got this mighty army coming at them, and they've got the Red Sea behind them. They are up against the wall. No! They're in God's hand! When you understand Psalm 46. With what we're living and experiencing today, I'll be honest with you, it could be very easy to get absolutely consumed, distraught, devastated by everything that's in, to lose all hope and be in despair if we didn't understand that God is my refuge and have a relationship with him. So they're standing there, and what are they going to do? They're a bunch of just released slaves. They're not a mighty army. They're not warriors. They've got everything they're dragging with them, this huge caravan, and they're up against, and listen as I read. And when Pharaoh drew near, the children of Israel lifted up their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians marched after them. So they were very afraid. And the children of Israel cried out to the Lord. Then they said to Moses, because there were no graves in Egypt, you have taken us away to die in the wilderness. I don't have time to spend on that, but it's interesting. Moses gets the blame for it. Why have you so dealt with us to bring us up out of Egypt? Is this not the word that we told you in Egypt, saying, let us alone that we may serve the Egyptians? For it would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than that we should die in the wilderness. And Moses said to the people, do not be afraid. Look, here it is. Stand still. Now, if you can think for a moment, as they're saying all of this to Moses, why did you bring us out here? You brought us out here, and here we are in this mess now. What, there wasn't enough ground. We could all be buried in Egypt. Why did you just leave us around? And you can just see them running back and forth. And Moses says, stand still, rest. But now he gives them a little bit more. For the Egyptians whom you see today, you shall not see again, no more forever. I love that. The Lord will fight for you, his strength. Back to Psalm 46. And you shall hold your peace. That's rest. So we find that be still. Set down your worry. Set down your concerns. Set down your panic. Set down all of these things that can consume us. Set down the struggles and the difficulties. Set them down. Rest in him. Be still. Now here's the reality of it. You know what we all do? We all struggle with this back and forth. It's something that you do every day. Every minute of every day. I choose from one minute to the next whether I'm going to be still in him and rest in him, or whether I'm going to be consumed by everything that's going on around. We make that choice every day. It's a lifelong discipline that we do. It's not a once and done thing like when we were born again. That's once and done. That's over. That's not repeated. But every day I make the choice of whether I'm going to be in the refuge, God, and whether I'm going to lean on His strength for what I'm facing, what I'm dealing with. I give it over to Him. The next battle comes, give it to Him. The next thing comes, it's that thing of delegating. I don't want that problem on my desk. Here, Lord. I don't want that problem on my desk either. Here you go, Lord. I don't want that issue. Now, sidestep for that just a moment. That does not mean that we as believers go through life with our head in the sand, so to speak, or our head in the clouds. No, that's the other extreme. We understand. We know what's going on. Remember, I said be concerned without being consumed. Understand what's going on in the world. Live in the same world that the people who have no hope are in, so that they can see the hope who is in you, and His name is Jesus Christ. And so we see here, be still. The next word, and know. And know. These are connected. Be still and know. The reason I can be still is because of what I know. Now, there's different ways of saying know, K-N-O-W, in different languages, multiple ways of saying it. In English, unfortunately, for us, it's pretty much one way. We have the word know, K-N-O-W, that's it. But in different languages like Hebrew and Greek, there are different nuances of the word know that help us understand, and I've shared this on Sunday night multiple times. So there is a way of saying that I know about something purely because I've read it, and I have knowledge in my, I know about that. I've read that. I've not had any personal experience. And then the other extreme is I know about that. Not only do I have the head knowledge, I've experienced that. So let me illustrate it with something that just happened with our family here this past week. So two of my grandchildren, Emma and Craig, their father is pastoring a little church over outside of Vinco there, or in Vinco. And so there's a gentleman in the church who has an airplane at the Johnstown Airport, so he takes them up for plane rides. So the other day, they were on a plane ride. So they're flying around. They fly over around Racetown, and they come back around this way, okay? And my wife gets a message from my son-in-law. Hey, we're flying over. And she's out at the laundry line. And here's this plane coming, okay? Now, there they are, and they're waving at one another. Now, they could see her. She could see a plane. It's not like they're hanging out the window, doing that kind of thing. So they could see her, and that got them all excited and everything. Well, here's the difference, okay? So my wife knew of it. There's the plane. I know that. I see that the plane is flying. I know planes fly. I have that knowledge. But she didn't have the same knowledge they did because they saw the plane. They knew that it flew, but they're in it. They were experiencing the knowledge, not just knowing the knowledge. The word here is experience the knowledge, not just know it in your head. Experience, it's relationship. You know me. So be still and know. So what am I supposed to know? Third point. First point is be still. Second point, and know. Third point, that I am God. It's interesting. He doesn't say be still and know, I'm going to work all this out for you. Be still and know, these problems are going to go away. Be still and know, I'm going to fix this. Be still and know, I'll get you out of this. None of that's in there. You know what he says? Be still and know, I'm God. In a way, what he's saying is, you're not. Be still and know that I am God. John chapter 14, Jesus says, let not your heart be troubled. Sounds a little bit like Psalm 46, all the troubles going on. And Jesus says, let not your heart be troubled. I shared this with you before. If that verse ended there, it would be a nice little slogan, but it needs something to stand on. It needs a foundation. So he says, let not your heart be troubled. Here's the foundation. You believe in God, believe also in me. It's kind of what's being said here. Be still and know that I am God. He says, let not your heart be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. So it is not just a knowledge about God, but it is an experience, a relationship with God. Be still and know that I am God. Now we quote this verse and, all kinds of different situations and circumstances, but now we understand the context that it flows out of. It comes from an experience in life where the enemy, an overwhelming enemy, was coming against them, and they were looking at being just defeated and overrun. I think it was Sennacherib and his vast army that was about to besiege the city of God. And God is telling them, listen, don't run around, the sky is falling, okay? The stock market's falling, the health is falling, politics are falling. Well, they've always been down. But, so you see all of this, and we run around, and he's saying, be still and know that I'm God. So when we began, I said, here's the title of the message. When, blank line. You fill in the blank line. Now I'm telling you, whether you put health, politics, finances, economics, whatever it might be, job security, relationship, whatever. When, here's what you do. Be still and know that I am God. Do you know that's the answer to every crisis and dilemma that we face in this world? Be still. Now that be still is rest in Him. When I rest in Him, that means I trust Him with everything. Know Him is my relationship with Him. Do you have a relationship with Him? Do you have a relationship with the living God through His Son, Jesus Christ, who came into the world to die for you? Have you put your faith in Him? And do you know Him as God? Your Bible there where it says that I am God, that little word am, okay, should be italicized. It's not literally there, it's inferred there in the structure of the language, and it is emphatic that I, God. It doesn't sound like good English, it's very good Hebrew. It's an emphatic statement. I, God. He is sovereign over everything, even what we're seeing going on in this chaotic, messed up, sin-fallen world. And doesn't it make you glad of the prophetic image that is in this of a holy city that is yet to come? You see, they were talking here at the city that they knew of that day. But in this, we see a reflection to Revelation 22. A holy city, not made with hands, built by God, brought down from heaven, that holy city. Jesus talks about it. He says, I'm going to prepare a place for you. How many of us have thought, when Jesus said, I'm going to prepare a place for you, it's just, my place. He's working on my house now. Well, next lot on the development, then he's going to work on yours. That's not it. Jesus he's building everything. It's the whole new. Be still and know that I am God. It begins by putting your faith in Jesus Christ and not in politics, not in health care, not in finances, but in Jesus Christ. Have you put your faith in Him and in Him alone? Have you come to a place in your life where you realize that you are a sinner, lost and destined to an eternity in hell without God? And understand that there is nothing, absolutely nothing that you can do to escape that in and of yourself. And that Jesus Christ came into the world to die on the cross to pay the penalty for your sin. His body, His blood, the sacrifice for your sin. And you need only accept it by faith. Father, I want to thank you and praise you for the opportunity to open your word today, to preach your truth. Lord, I pray that it goes beyond our ears, into our hearts, our minds, and that we live it out. So as we go through the days, the weeks, the months, perhaps the years that are ahead of us, of uncertainty in this world, we know the absolutes of your word. So help us to be a people who are still knowing that you are God, being lights in the darkness, so that those who are consumed in darkness might come to the light Jesus' name, amen. Lord bless you all. Just a reminder that we do not have evening service this week. Prayer meeting this week, Wednesday evening, 7 o'clock, will be over in 108 where we traditionally meet. We'll be over in 108. We'll not be here in the auditorium. So we encourage you to join us for prayer meeting this week. The Lord bless you all.